Troy Carter. He's a Democrat from Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District in New Orleans. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Let's talk about the president's spending bill. You guys have seen, because of a couple of Democrat holdouts, you've seen this bill possibly go from a $3.5 trillion spending bill to maybe even a $1.5 trillion spending bill. Are you good with that number?
Listen, obviously, I'd love to have the larger number. Louisiana and America can certainly support the larger number because the needs are that big. And in fact, we can argue that even those numbers aren't big enough. But at some point, we have to be willing to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And in a deliberative body such as Congress, you've got 535 different members with different people that they represent, combining House and Senate, 435, of course, in the body that I serve. So you've got people that have very strong ideas on how money should be spent, how it should be appropriated. And at some point, negotiation is the rule of the day, is to get the best that you can and then live to fight another day. So from my perspective, I'd love it to be the larger number, but I'm realistic that in order to compromise and get it done, we may have to settle for something a little less than what would be perfect in the hearts and minds of many.
And on the other side of the aisle, you even have some Republicans who believe that even the lesser amount, $1.5 trillion, might even be too much, and they've complained about how are we going to pay for all this? What's your answer to them?
Well, I would argue what's too much, and what does that mean? The problems of America are huge, and how do we stick our heads in the sand and suggest that they're going to go away on their own? People send us to Washington to come up with solutions and find ways to make people's lives better, their quality of life, their infrastructure, the whole 9 yards of day-to-day living in America is not easy. And we have been on a kick the can down the road collision course for a very long time. We now have an opportunity to stop the kicking and start the building. And building back better, by the way. So we should take advantage of this opportunity. And listen, there's never going to be a perfect time for anything. There's never going to be a perfect solution when the pain is invisible. You know what? The longer we wait to treat the patient, the sicker the patient gets. The sooner we can get to seeing the patient and putting preventive maintenance in place rather than having to go back and fix broken things. Let's build things that can sustain the weather, that's more resilient, that's stronger, that gives us the opportunity to utilize new technologies. All of it's building America, our brand, not a Republican or Democratic brand, but the brand that belongs to all of us as Americans that makes us stronger, more resilient, and a better community for everyone to live and raise their families.
So the funding for historically black colleges could be one of the casualties of this lesser amount. I believe the AP reported that the bill was changed. I think it went down from $45 billion to $2 billion, possibly even fewer dollars than that. The AP reported that it was changed because of Democrats sort of infighting. I saw that you tweeted, in fact, I'll read the tweet, I think I have it here. You tweeted, when colleges refuse to admit black students, HBCUs offered them a safe space and a high-quality education. We must ensure that these institutions have the resources necessary to thrive and continue their important work. Will you fight for more funding for HBCUs in this bill?
Absolutely. HBCUs have done an incredible amount of work in the area of educating African Americans and minorities. Now, as you mentioned in my tweet, I talk about the fact what was the reason that they first came online, and that was to deal with the racism and racist practices of not allowing African Americans in the mainstream institutions. Now, since that time, it's concentrated on providing a quality education for minorities all over the country. And statistically, if you look at the success of HBCUs, you see that many of our leaders, myself, a graduate of HBCU, Xavier University of Louisiana, a vice president, a graduate of Howard University, D.C., and you look at the caliber and the type of individuals and the education it's provided and the level of professionals that are directly linked to an education at HBCU, you will see the value has not outlived its worth. In fact, we need to double down on the resources to make sure that we build and make sure these institutions remain competitive. So along with Alma Adams, who's the honorable congresswoman from North Carolina, who has been the real fighter on everything HBCU, I plan to stand side by side with her to fight for those resources, that those cuts don't happen in an area that we can least afford to cut: education. I mean, education is what really builds the four corners of our country. A strong and educated electorate makes for a better country.
Congressman, do you have a dollar amount? Would you like to see get back to the $45 billion mark?
Obviously, in the perfect world, I'd love to be back at the 45 mark, but I also understand that within the totality of the 3.5 trillion, that number's coming down. So naturally, as it comes down, everything will have to take a bit of a haircut. Some things can take more of a haircut than others, and this one will probably have to sustain some degree of a haircut, but certainly not to the tune that is currently represented in the proposed measure.
All right, Congressman Troy Carter, we'll be watching these votes coming up. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, sir.
All right.